The pendant was a decoy. The real target was far more dangerous. Welcome to the channel, where every story reveals something deeper. If you're here, it's because you're drawn to tales that stir the heart and awaken the mind. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love seeing our global community grow with each story we share. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because tomorrow, we're dropping another unforgettable story. One that might just change the way you see the world. Now settle in, because this one will stay with you. They called it the Crown's Whisper. A golden pendant just 3.2 ounces in weight, barely larger than a coin. But it carried the legacy of an empire. Once worn by Queen Victoria herself, it had been locked away in the royal archives for decades. That is, until one early spring morning when it returned to the light. The Royal Exhibition Hall at Kensington Palace was a marvel that day. Red velvet ropes, marble columns glowing in soft daylight, and a hush of reverence filled the room. Tourists, diplomats, and select VIPs had gathered to witness a rare display. A collection of relics from the Victorian era, each piece more storied than the last. But the centerpiece, displayed in a temperature-controlled glass dome, was that pendant, the Crown's Whisper. Security was tight. Armed palace guards, CCTV, and the unwavering presence of the Queen's Guard flanked the entrance. Among them stood Sergeant Ethan Riley, a 34-year-old veteran of the Queen's Guard. He stood 6'2" in his ceremonial scarlet tunic and bearskin hat, perfectly still, eyes forward, as tradition required. He was not allowed to speak, not allowed to look around, and certainly not allowed to react to the crowd, no matter what happened. At precisely 10:47 a.m., the dome housing the pendant was found open. No alarms had been triggered. No force had been used. The glass was intact, but the pendant was gone. Panic rippled silently. Event staff, stunned, ushered guests back. Plainclothes security began sweeping the hall. The CCTV footage? Clean. The angle nearest the exhibit had gone temporarily out of focus. A glitch, they said. No one saw anything. It was as if the pendant had vanished into thin air. But Sergeant Riley, he saw something. He hadn't moved an inch during the entire ceremony. Not his head, not even his eyes. But what he did notice was movement, subtle, intentional movement, from a man near the front. While everyone else gazed upward, phones out, murmuring in awe, one man shifted positions 5 separate times. That alone wasn't alarming. But how he shifted caught Ethan's attention. The steps, the exact rhythm, the spacing. It was familiar, too familiar. 4 inches heel to toe. 2-second pause. Right foot pivots left, not outward, inward. It was military, precise, controlled. That man hadn't just been walking. He was maneuvering, like someone trained to move within protocol, not stand in awe of royal history. And in that moment, Ethan's instincts sharpened. Though he showed nothing outwardly, he replayed the moment in his mind. The man had worn brown suede shoes, not common for London, and yet the soles barely made a sound. His hands never left the inside of his coat, even while pretending to clap. His posture rigid, shoulders high, chin tucked. It was posture Ethan had seen before, in drills, in deployments, and once. A file about a dismissed Marine turned artifact trafficker. But Ethan couldn't say anything. As a Queen's Guard, he was bound by duty. He couldn't report suspicions unless commanded. He couldn't turn his head. He couldn't give chase. Still, what he could do was remember. He stood there motionless for another hour, long after the pendant had disappeared, long after the crowd had been cleared, long after the suspect had slipped into the London mist. But Ethan had him in his mind's eye. His height, the exact angle of his jawline, the worn leather around his collar, even the specific rhythm of how he tapped his foot when pretending to admire another piece. That night, when relieved from his post, he walked silently past the archives, not saying a word. But he had already begun piecing together a map in his mind, of patterns, faces, footsteps, and habits, because Ethan Riley hadn't looked away. He never had to, and that was the moment the thief made his greatest mistake. That night, Ethan didn't sleep. He sat alone in his modest flat overlooking the dim rooftops of South Kensington, uniform still on, boots unlaced but not removed. The image of the man with the brown suede shoes kept flashing through his mind, calm, calculated, almost too confident. Ethan had served 2 tours in Afghanistan. He knew a soldier's gait when he saw one, and this guy, he wasn't sightseeing. He was executing a plan. At 6 a.m., Ethan was back at the barracks. While most guards prepared for ceremonial drill, he requested a short meeting with his former commanding officer, Major Albright, now part of internal royal security. Ethan didn't have proof, but he had something better, a soldier's instinct, and a memory sharper than any camera lens. "I can't make an official statement," Ethan said, voice low, "but I saw someone moving through the crowd like he was on recon, military trained, and I've got a name." The name came from deep in Ethan's memory. Caleb Dorn, dishonorably discharged from the Royal Marines in 2017 for smuggling wartime artifacts. Last seen in Prague. Ethan remembered Dorn's file during a security rotation briefing 3 years ago, a name no one had taken seriously since. Until now. Albright narrowed his eyes. "You sure?" "I'm not saying he stole the pendant," Ethan replied, but he was there. He moved like he knew the blind spots. He knew the timing of the changeovers. He knew us. That was enough for Albright to authorize a discreet internal investigation. No official word, no press, just quiet background work. But Ethan, he wasn't done. He started piecing together Dorn's pattern. Using archived security footage, older than what was available to the press, he noticed something strange. Over the last 6 months, a man matching Dorn's build and mannerisms had shown up at 4 other historical exhibitions across Europe. In Florence, a Roman dagger vanished. In Vienna, a Napoleonic medal disappeared without a trace. No forced entry, no broken glass, no suspects. Every theft happened during peak visiting hours. Maximum crowd, maximum distraction, minimum suspicion. And in each case, the thief walked away unnoticed, blending into the background like wallpaper. But there was one pattern. In every exhibition, someone had requested a guided maintenance inspection for the ventilation system the day before the theft. Ethan flagged it immediately, and this time, the Kensington Palace exhibition had the same request, filed under the name C. Dorn Associates. That was all Ethan needed. He presented his findings to Albright, who handed them straight to MI5. Still, Ethan wasn't satisfied. He asked to be posted back at the exhibition, same spot, same hours. If Dorn had the pendant, he'd want to move it. He wouldn't hold on to it forever. And Ethan believed, no, he knew, that the man would return to watch the aftermath. 2 days later, he did. Same man. Same coat. This time with a black cap, pulled low. He stood quietly near the back, pretending to look at a map, but his eyes kept drifting toward the now empty dome. Ethan saw it from the corner of his vision, and in that instant, everything aligned. He used a subtle shift, just a 1/4-inch slide of his boot heel, prearranged with internal security, to send the E signal. Within 30 seconds, 2 plainclothes officers moved in from both sides. Dorn didn't run. He didn't have to. The pendant wasn't on him, but his phone was. And on that phone, high-resolution scans of 4 stolen artifacts, GPS drop points, and a voice memo saying, "Kensington complete. Transfer scheduled for Tuesday." Ethan stood still as the man was led away. He didn't smile, he didn't nod. But inside, he knew. He had never taken his eyes off the mission. And in the end, that's what made the difference. 3 days after, Caleb Dorn was taken into custody. The case should have been closed. The pendant wasn't just recovered. It was secured before it ever left palace grounds. The media never caught wind of it. And on paper, everything went back to normal. But something kept gnawing at Ethan Riley. It wasn't the fact that Dorn didn't resist arrest. It wasn't even the fact that the pendant was recovered before the exchange ever took place. No, what bothered Ethan was what he saw on that phone, the GPS drop points. There were 5 in total. One of them, marked simply as R6, was located within the palace grounds. And that made no sense. Why would Dorn leave a dead drop inside the most secure location in England? Unless he wasn't working alone. Ethan brought it up, quietly with Major Albright. At first, the commanding officer hesitated. Too many eyes were already watching, but Ethan pressed on, suggesting something that, to most, would sound outrageous. What if someone inside is helping him? Someone with clearance. Someone who knew our shift rotations, security blind spots, even which guards were where. The guy didn't guess. He was given intel. Albright went silent. Then he nodded once. That was all Ethan needed. Within 48 hours, Ethan was granted access to shift logs, maintenance requests, and CCTV blind spot maps. And what he found chilled him. There had been 3 temporary guards rotated in over the past 2 months, part of a new security subcontractor supposedly, working with Scotland Yard. Their backgrounds checked out, clean service records, no red flags. But when Ethan dug deeper, he noticed something unusual. All 3 men had trained at the same private security firm in the US, a firm later acquired by a shadow company with known ties to underground antiquities markets. The deeper he dug, the darker it got, but the breakthrough came late one night, when Ethan was scanning an archived video from the Vienna exhibition, one of the other thefts Dorn was linked to. In the background, blurry but unmistakable, stood one of the same temporary guards posing as a tourist. Same build, same slight limp on the left side. And in a split second of footage, the man looked straight at the camera and smiled. Ethan froze the frame. His stomach sank. He wasn't looking at a thief. He was looking at someone who wanted to be seen. It was a message. A dare. Back at Kensington, Ethan walked the perimeter alone after his shift. Every footstep on the marble echoed into the silence. He stopped outside the Royal Archives entrance. The hallway dim, just barely lit by amber sconces on the wall. It was there, in the far corner behind a maintenance panel, that he noticed a slight smudge, almost invisible. But to Ethan's trained eyes it screamed out. Someone had removed the panel recently. He knelt down, pressed gently, and the metal gave way. Inside wasn't just wiring. It was a hidden cavity no bigger than a shoebox. Inside it, a second fake pendant, identical in shape, weight, and material, but with one critical difference. This one was laced with a hollow core, the perfect vessel for smuggling microfilm, codes, or even bioagents. Ethan's pulse quickened. The pendant Dorn was meant to sell was never about jewelry. It was a carrier, a delivery system. The real target may have never been the artifact at all, but what it could carry across borders. He called Albright. No pleasantries, no delay. "Sir, we have a much bigger problem," Ethan said. Dorn was just the bait. The person behind this, they're still inside. And in that moment, for the first time since joining the Queen's Guard, Ethan realized this wasn't about ceremony anymore. It was war in silence, and it had already begun. The discovery of the Hollow Pendant changed everything. By the next morning, Ethan Riley was pulled from ceremonial duty and reassigned under quiet directive to work alongside internal intelligence. No fanfare. No explanations. Just a new black badge, a room without windows, and access to files far above his previous clearance. The pendant was now evidence in what was being called an active internal breach. The term was vague by design, but Ethan knew exactly what it meant. Someone within palace infrastructure, likely with high clearance, had used the cover of tradition and security to orchestrate a smuggling operation right under the Crown's nose. And the plan wasn't over. Not yet. The fake pendant had a micro-cavity, but it was empty. Whatever had been meant to go inside it hadn't been delivered, yet, which meant whoever was still inside the operation would try again. The question was, when? Ethan reviewed the palace's upcoming itinerary. Only one event stood out, a private gala scheduled in 4 days for foreign dignitaries. Closed press, minimal public attention. But it was being held in the Queen's Gallery, the exact room where the first pendant had disappeared. Too clean. Too familiar. This is it, Ethan muttered, eyes fixed on the layout. They're not finished, they're going to try again, and this time they're counting on us thinking it's over. Albright gave him the green light to prepare a counter-operation. No uniforms, no obvious security. Just a small team, hand-picked, embedded into the gallery as guests, vendors, and custodians. Ethan would be in place, not as a guard, but as a ghost. The day of the gala arrived. Dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, Ethan blended in with the crowd. Classical music played in the background, champagne flutes clinked, and high society floated from painting to sculpture, completely unaware they were inside a trap. At exactly 8:13 p.m., a small disturbance occurred in the northwest wing. Nothing big, just a spill. A tray of glasses dropped, a minor distraction. Ethan didn't flinch. He scanned the crowd, eyes sharp. That's when he saw her. A woman in her mid-40s, blonde, elegant, carrying a leather clutch with a gold pin shaped, like a thistle, a symbol rarely worn outside of military intelligence circles. She wasn't looking at the spill. She was watching who reacted. Her gaze wasn't passive, it was measuring. And when she turned, her steps led her directly to the hallway adjacent to the display case of the gallery's newest item, a Fabergé egg on loan from the Russian embassy. Ethan followed. She walked like she'd done this before. Not fast, not slow, just enough to seem like she belonged. Her hand brushed along the velvet rope. Then, without hesitation, she dropped the clutch. As she knelt to pick it up, her fingers moved under the baseboard. Just for a second. Ethan caught up as she stood. "Evening," he said, voice calm. She looked at him, surprised, but not afraid. "Lovely exhibit," she replied. "You dropped." "Something else?" Ethan said, holding out a small device, flat black with a blinking red light. He'd picked it up from under the rope before she could finish the job. Her smile didn't fade, but her eyes changed. "You're not palace staff," she said quietly. "And you're not here for the Fabergé egg," Ethan replied. Within moments, his team surrounded them. She didn't resist. She didn't need to. The damage had already been planned. The device was a tracker, set to tag the royal artifact with nanotech that could transmit its location anywhere in the world. It wasn't theft. It was surveillance. Someone, somewhere, wanted to know where every key artifact on British soil was located, in real time. As she was escorted out, she looked back at Ethan. "You're good," she said. "But you're too late." Ethan stood, frozen. What did she mean? Back in the command room, they opened her phone. A single message had been sent moments before her arrest. Initiate Rook phase. Kensington was just the test. And just like that, Ethan knew. They were never after one. Pendant, they were building a map, and the game had only just begun. The words hit harder than a bullet. Initiate Rook phase. Kensington was just the test. Ethan stared at the screen, heart pounding like a war drum. In that moment, everything fell into place. Kensington wasn't the target. It was the trial run. A probe, a rehearsal for something bigger, broader, and far more dangerous. And Rook phase? That wasn't just military lingo. That was chess language. The Rook didn't move subtly. It didn't sneak. It struck fast, straight, and hard, covering long ground in a single decisive motion. This wasn't about stealing artifacts anymore. This was about access. Mapping artifact locations was only the beginning. These operatives were creating a digital replica of the British Crown's most valuable and symbolic objects. Artifacts, treasures, classified heirlooms that weren't just decorative. Some contained security protocols, coded engravings, even biometric locks tied to diplomatic protocols. The pendant had been a test of physical extraction. The tracker was a test of digital infiltration. The next phase? Ethan feared it would. be a hybrid attack. Physical and cyber planned to unfold with clockwork precision. Within hours, the palace was on high alert, but word didn't go public. Not yet. The Queen's gallery was shut down, artifacts relocated. Private security briefings turned into war room strategy sessions. Ethan, now thrust into a role he never asked for, was seated at a table across from analysts, encryption experts, and MI5 operatives. Not one of them knew exactly who was behind Rook phase, but they all agreed on one thing. It was only days away. Ethan couldn't shake the final words of the woman he'd caught. "You're good, but you're too late." What had they missed? He returned to the surveillance room alone later that night, reviewing footage from the gala frame by frame. He was looking for something, anything, that didn't fit. And then he saw it. In the background of the spill incident, a maintenance worker wheeling a cleaning cart. No one paid attention. Why would they? But Ethan paused, zoomed in, and there it was, on the handle of the mop cart. A small sticker, a white chess piece, a rook. He froze. The worker had passed directly through 3 separate halls, each housing objects tied not to wealth but sovereignty. The scepter of mercy, the sword of state, and the stone of scone replica. Not the kind of artifacts you steal to sell. The eye. "Can you steal to send a message?" Ethan leaned in, whispering to himself. They're not stealing symbols. They're planning to destroy them, live, all at once. That was the point of the mapping. That was the reason for the trackers. Not to take, to time, to hit every location simultaneously, to dismantle not just physical objects, but the spiritual core of a nation. If the crown's most sacred relics fell, trust in the system would fall with them. The team mobilized instantly. All artifacts were pulled from display, routes changed, lockdowns initiated at secure vaults across the country. But Ethan had one final concern. The original pendant, the crown's whisper, was never meant to be part of this phase. So why had it been targeted first? Unless it held something more, something even Ethan didn't know. He raced to the secure holding chamber, where the pendant had been sealed in a titanium case. The guard on duty, a familiar face, stood stiff as always. "Private Jenkins," Ethan said, stepping forward. But Jenkins didn't answer. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Jenkins was too still. Unnaturally still. He stepped closer. The man's chest wasn't rising. Unconscious. Ethan lunged forward, opened the case. Empty. Gone. Not stolen. Switched. Underneath a card. No signature. No handwriting. Just an emblem burned into the corner. Rook. The game was far from over. And now the king was in check. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, we want to hear from you. What do you think is really going on behind the scenes? Do you believe Ethan is chasing a ghost? Or is there a larger conspiracy unfolding right under the crown's nose? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't hold back. Maybe you noticed a clue we didn't. Or maybe you've got your own theory about what Rook phase truly means. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories reach. Your insights, reactions, and predictions help shape the direction of our future episodes. Do you think Ethan can stop what's coming next? Or is he already one move behind? And if you enjoy this kind of suspenseful storytelling, where mystery, discipline, and loyalty collide, don't forget to subscribe. We're building a community of people who love intelligent thrillers, and your voice matters here. So take a second, scroll down, and share your take. Because in a world full of secrets, sometimes the most unexpected detail comes from the sharp eyes of someone just like you.